Captain Elena Vale stood in the command center of the Hope, staring out at the vastness of space. The hospital ship, a marvel of engineering, was cruising at full speed towards the distant colony of Epsilon 4. It wasn't the kind of mission that required constant attention. Routine. Supply run. Medical aid for a colony struggling with a viral outbreak. Nothing too extraordinary, nothing to rattle the crew. She shifted in her seat, her gaze flicking across the various readouts on the holographic displays before her. The soft hum of the ship's systems was a familiar lull, the peacefulness of space, broken only by the occasional communications from command or the simple updates from her crew. Her thoughts were elsewhere, miles away from the task at hand. Then, a sharp chime cut through the quiet. Elena's hand instinctively reached for the comms button, eyes narrowing as she glanced at the sudden alert that had appeared on her terminal. "Captain Vale," came the voice of Lieutenant Rhea, the ship's communications officer, "we're receiving a strange signal. It's not from Epsilon 4. Elena stood, her boots clicking sharply on the metal floor as she made her way toward the console. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, and a garbled series of noises echoed from the speaker. It sounded like static at first. The usual interference from distant space debris, perhaps. But then, there was something else. A pattern. A rhythm. "Can you clean it up?" Elena asked. Rhea worked quickly, adjusting the frequency filters and boosting the signal. Slowly, the distortion faded, and the signal became clearer. Words. They were faint but unmistakable. "Elena," the voice whispered through the static. It wasn't from any of her crew. "They're coming. You need to." The message cut off abruptly, replaced by a low hum that sent a shiver down her spine. "Did you get that?" Elena asked, her voice tense. I don't know," Rhea replied. "It sounded like someone was trying to warn us." Elena's heart raced. "Did you trace it?" "I tried. But the source is unpredictable. It's coming from all directions at once, Captain. It's like it's coming from everywhere." Elena's mind raced. Was it a distress signal? A garbled message from another ship? Or something far worse? There was no time to dwell on the possibilities. She had a job to do. "Keep monitoring," she said. "We're not diverting course. Epsilon 4 needs those supplies." But she couldn't shake the unease. Something about the voice, the urgency in it, even through the static. It wasn't just a warning, it was a plea. Hours later. The eerie silence returned, and the ship's hum settled back into its usual rhythm. Elena returned to her post, trying to push the strange message out of her mind. Yet, the feeling lingered like a shadow at the edge of her thoughts. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered again, this time by an alarm. "Captain. We're detecting multiple ships on the radar. And they're moving toward us fast." Rhea's voice was tight with panic. Elena's eyes snapped to the main display. Her breath caught in her chest as she saw them, 8 massive vessels, each one gleaming with a dark, metallic sheen. They were nothing like the ships humanity had built, no design she had ever seen before. They were sleek, angular, and appeared to be moving with unnatural precision. "Status of the colony?" Elena asked, trying to focus. Was this an attack? Was this the alien fleet? "Nothing yet," Rhea responded quickly. "But they're closing in fast. No communication. No identification. I'm running a scan, but they're jamming all frequencies." Elena's mind raced. Was this the same force from the warning? The unknown signal? And if so, why had they targeted her? What did they want from the Hope? "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the rising panic in her chest. "We need to get out of their trajectory. Helm, engage at full power. Let's move." But the ship didn't respond. What the hell? Elena muttered under her breath. The controls were locked. She glanced at Rhea, her eyes wide. They've locked us down, Rhea said, her voice trembling. We can't move. We're stuck in place. Open a comm link, Elena said urgently. Maybe we can reason with them. Before Rhea could respond, the ship's alarms blared once again, and a new voice, louder, more mechanical, ripped through the air. This is your final warning, human vessel. Cease all operations immediately, or we will be forced to respond. The voice was cold. Unyielding. Alien. The tone sent a shiver through Elena's spine. She glanced at the screen, seeing the alien ships now surrounding the Hope like a predator cornering its prey. No room for escape. No way out. What do they want? Rhea whispered, her face pale. They want the ship, Elena said, her mind working furiously. The message had been a warning, not just to evacuate, but to surrender. Get to the escape pods. Now. I'll stay and try to hold them off. Rhea shook her head. Captain, no. We can't. Just do it. Elena shouted, her voice a mixture of fear and command. I'll buy you some time. The crew must survive. That's the priority. Rhea hesitated, her eyes brimming with uncertainty, but she quickly nodded and began to move. Elena turned back to the main screen, her heart hammering in her chest. The countdown on the ship's display signaled the approach of the alien ships. The first one loomed closer, its sleek silhouette growing larger and larger. She could see faint, ominous markings across its surface. What kind of weaponry did they possess? What were they capable of? Then the voice came again, booming through the speakers. This is your final warning, human vessel. Prepare to surrender. Your resistance is futile. Elena's mind raced. They had no weapons capable of fighting back. This ship wasn't meant for combat. It was a hospital ship, a sanctuary for the sick, the wounded, and the helpless. There were no soldiers aboard. Only medical staff. But now, her crew would need to be more than just doctors and nurses. They would need to survive. They would need to fight. The first alien ship was nearly on top of them now, its dark hull casting a shadow across the Hope. And then, the unthinkable happened. A single, massive beam of blue energy shot out from the alien ship's core and struck the Hope. The whole ship lurched violently. Elena was thrown against the console, the lights flickering and alarms blaring. The ship's systems struggled to stay online, but the damage was too severe. She could feel it then, the cold realization that they were far from safe. The warning had been real. The attack was happening now. And they weren't ready. Just as Elena scrambled to regain control of the ship's failing systems, a final, haunting message crackled over the comms. The time for diplomacy is over. You have been warned. Prepare to face the consequences of your existence. The alien ship's weapon powered up again. The Hope was crippled. Its systems were failing one by one, alarms echoing through every corridor, as the crew scrambled to assess the damage. Elena Vale stood in the command center, trying to stay calm despite the chaos around her. The alien ships, now encircling them, had made their intentions clear. There was no escaping. No negotiating. Captain, we're losing power in the aft engines, Lieutenant Rhea reported, her voice laced with panic. The hull integrity is down to 35%. We can't hold much longer. Elena's knuckles whitened as she gripped the command chair, her gaze fixed on the flickering displays. She had never imagined being in a situation like this. A medical ship, a lifeline for colonists, now a target in the midst of an alien assault. There was nothing they could do to fight back, not with the limited resources they had. The alien fleet's ships hovered ominously outside the Hope, dark and imposing. The humming sound of their energy weapons could be faintly heard in the distance, a constant reminder of the threat that loomed just beyond the ship's outer hull. "Do we have any way of contacting Earth?" Elena asked, her voice tight with desperation. Rhea worked furiously at her console, trying to reroute power to the communications system, but every effort was in vain. The alien ships had effectively jammed all frequencies. Earth was out of reach. Captain, Lieutenant Harris, the ship's chief engineer, called out from the rear. "We've got incoming damage reports from the medical bay, engineering, and the cryo rooms. Some of the cryo tubes are failing. We're losing valuable personnel." The panic in Harris's voice was enough to make Elena's stomach turn. She knew the cryo chambers held some of the most vulnerable patients, those who were in critical need of treatment. Losing them would mean more than just equipment failure, it would be a human tragedy. "Keep the medical bay functioning," Elena ordered. "Rhea, try to get a message to Earth." "Harris, is there any way we can at least defend ourselves?" Harris shook his head. "Captain, we don't have the firepower for a proper defense. The ship's primary function is medical, not combat. We have some emergency flares, but that's not going to do anything against their fleet." Elena's mind raced, her eyes darting around the command center as if hoping for a sign. She knew they couldn't rely on their own strength to survive this. They needed help, something that could turn the tide. But who would help them? The colony was far from Earth, and they were stranded in the vast emptiness of space. Then it hit her, Earth's secret fleet. The fleet that had been kept hidden, away from the public eye, far from the knowledge of most humans. She had heard rumors of it, rumors of an advanced military force designed to protect humanity from extraterrestrial threats. Could they be real? Suddenly, the ship jolted again, throwing Elena off balance. She struggled to stay on her feet as the lights flickered. "We've just lost communications entirely," Rhea cried out. "They've completely locked us down. We're sitting ducks." "Not yet," Elena muttered to herself. "There has to be something we can do." As she spoke, the ship's forward monitor suddenly blinked to life. A new signal appeared on the screen, accompanied by a low, mechanical hum. "Captain, there's something on the comms," Rhea said, her fingers flying across the console. It's not an alien transmission. It's human." Elena's breath caught in her throat. A human signal? But how? How could anyone be out here, in the middle of nowhere, at the exact moment they were being attacked? Her heart began to race, a flicker of hope stirring within her. "Put it through," she ordered. The screen flickered and then cleared, revealing a sleek, dark warship that appeared on the display, a vessel far more advanced than anything Earth had ever publicly shown. The design was elegant yet intimidating, like something from a future humanity could only dream of. The ship's logo was unfamiliar, a symbol of two crossed swords surrounded by stars, but Elena didn't have time to analyze the details. She was more focused on the man who appeared on the screen. He was in his mid-40s, with a stern, no-nonsense demeanor. His uniform was a deep navy blue with silver insignia that Elena had never seen before. His eyes were cold and calculating, yet there was something deeply reassuring about his presence. This was a man who didn't flinch in the face of danger. "This is Commander Cale Draven of Earth's Defense Fleet," the man said, his voice steady and authoritative. "I'm here to offer assistance, Captain Vale." Elena blinked in disbelief. "You're real? Earth's Defense Fleet?" Draven's expression didn't change. "We've been watching. We've been waiting. Your distress signal was intercepted by our long-range satellites. We've been monitoring the alien fleet's movements for weeks. We know what they're capable of. But we're not a military ship." Elena protested. "We're a hospital ship. We're carrying supplies for a colony in need. We're unarmed." "We know," Draven replied. "Which is exactly why we're here. Your ship is now a target, and we'll do everything in our power to protect it. But we need you to listen carefully. There's no time to waste. Elena's mind raced. They couldn't fend off an alien invasion on their own, not with a ship built for medical aid. But if Draven was speaking the truth, this could be their only chance for survival. What do you need us to do? Elena asked, her voice steady now, despite the rising anxiety. Stay alive, Draven said, his eyes never leaving the screen. We'll take it from here. Hours later. The Hope's crew scrambled to stabilize the ship's critical systems as Earth's defense fleet arrived. 4 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything Elena had ever seen, dropped out of hyperspace, surrounding the Hope in a protective formation. Their sleek, dark hulls glinted in the dim light of distant stars, and their weapons were charged, ready for combat. The alien fleet, once so confident in its assault, hesitated. The mysterious, technologically superior force that had arrived out of nowhere was something they clearly hadn't anticipated. A tense standoff ensued as the alien ships observed Earth's fleet from a distance. Elena was pacing in the command center, her mind still reeling from the strange turn of events. It was as if the very fabric of space itself had bent in response to their desperate situation. She had never heard of this fleet, not in any military report, not in any briefing. The knowledge of its existence was classified, far beyond the reach of ordinary citizens, even high-ranking officers. But now, they had come to protect the Hope, and it was clear that the enemy ships weren't prepared for a fight against Earth's military might. Captain, Rhea said, breaking Elena from her thoughts. Commander Draven is requesting a meeting. He says there's something important you need to know about the alien fleet. Elena's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what else could be more important than the battle they were currently facing. But with the stakes this high, there was no room for hesitation. Send him through, Elena replied. The screen flickered to life once again, revealing Commander Draven's stern face. He wasn't in the middle of a battle, instead, his backdrop was the calm, dark expanse of space, with the glowing lights of the warships visible in the distance. We've been analyzing the alien ship's movements, Draven said, his voice low and focused. They're not just here for conquest. They're here for something specific. Elena frowned. What do you mean? Draven's eyes narrowed. They're after the Hope, and not because it's a hospital ship. They want what you're carrying. Elena's stomach sank. What do they want from us? Whatever it is, Draven continued, it's something they need. And it's something that could change the course of this war. Before Elena could respond, a warning light flashed across the command center. The alien fleet was moving again, and this time, they weren't hesitating. They were preparing for a direct strike on the Hope. Elena stood frozen in the command center, her eyes glued to the screen in front of her. The alien fleet was no longer just hovering, unsure of their next move. They were advancing. No hesitation, no waiting. Their weapons powered up, the ominous hum of energy charging the air, ready to unleash destruction. Commander Draven's warships had surrounded the Hope, their shields glowing faintly in the blackness of space. The Earth fleet had taken up a defensive position, but it was clear that a full confrontation was inevitable. And yet, something in Draven's voice, the urgency in his eyes, hinted that there was more at play than just a simple military engagement. Captain, the enemy fleet is locking on to us, Rhea reported, her voice trembling slightly as her fingers danced across the controls. Their weapon systems are primed. Elena gritted her teeth. Her mind raced. There had to be something they weren't seeing, something more beneath the surface. Why were these aliens so focused on the Hope? And why hadn't they destroyed the ship already? They're trying to disable us, not destroy us, Lieutenant Harris observed from his station. They're after something specific. We need to figure out what before they manage to get it. Elena nodded. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. The whole situation had escalated so quickly, and yet, one thing was clear, they were in grave danger, and time was running out. They needed answers. But first, they had to survive. "Commander Draven," Elena called out, her voice firm. "What exactly are we facing here? You said they want something the Hope is carrying. What is it?" Draven's face appeared on the screen again, his expression even more grim than before. "I'm afraid I don't have the full picture, Captain. But I'll tell you what we know. The alien ships are not a typical invasion fleet. These ships are part of a larger, highly secretive operation. They've been hunting down specific targets for months, rare, highly valuable human technologies that could tip the scales of power in the galaxy." "Human technologies?" Elena repeated, confused. "But we're a medical ship. We don't carry military equipment. We only have supplies for the colony on Epsilon 4. "Exactly," Draven replied. "And that's what makes this situation even more dangerous. The Hope is carrying something that, to the aliens, could be more valuable than anything we've ever built." Elena's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? What could we have that they would want?" Draven leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You don't know it yet, but the Hope is carrying a prototype, a piece of technology that could change the way we fight wars, the way we defend ourselves. It's a weapon, Captain. A secret weapon. One that was developed by Earth's Defense Division in collaboration with a few select scientists who have long since disappeared." Elena felt her knees buckle. "A weapon," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "But that doesn't make sense. We were told the Hope was on a medical mission. There's no weapon aboard this ship." Draven's face was stern. "That's exactly what the aliens are after. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to get their hands on it." The tension in the command center was palpable. The crew members worked quickly, trying to stabilize the failing systems while preparing for an inevitable assault. Elena's mind churned, trying to piece together the mystery. A weapon. A secret weapon hidden within a medical ship, one that the aliens would go to any lengths to obtain. "What do we do now?" Rhea asked, her hands shaking as she stared at the flickering screens. "They're about to attack. We need to buy time," Elena said, trying to think through the chaos. "We'll do everything we can to hold them off. I need you all to prepare for an emergency evacuation. Get the patients in the cryo chambers ready to be transferred to the escape pods." "What about the crew?" Harris asked, his eyes wide with concern. "Everyone stays. We fight this to the end," Elena said, her voice resolute. She had made her decision. The Hope wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of humanity's hope, and she wasn't going to let it fall without a fight. Rhea gave a quick nod and turned to her station. Harris didn't hesitate either, moving quickly to communicate with the engineering team. Elena took a deep breath, staring at the screen that displayed the alien ships in the distance. They were too close now. There would be no more time to wonder about their motives. They were going to attack. "Captain," Draven's voice broke through the comms again. "I'm sending a tactical plan to your system. It's risky, but it's our best shot at surviving this. You'll need to use the ship's auxiliary thrusters to engage in evasive maneuvers. It won't guarantee safety, but it might give us an edge." Elena didn't need to be told twice. She was already moving, directing her crew with precision and urgency. "Prepare to engage auxiliary thrusters. Rhea, send a distress signal to Earth. We need backup." "Signal's been jammed," Rhea said, her frustration evident. "We can't reach anyone. It's up to us." A deadly countdown. The alien ships began their advance, closing in on the Hope like predators circling their prey. Their weapons hummed, and the flashing red lights across the ship intensified as their targeting systems locked onto the vulnerable hospital vessel. Elena clenched her fists as she watched them approach. There had to be something she was missing, some way to outsmart them. Captain, Rhea said urgently, her voice breaking through the tension. I've just decrypted a small fragment of their comms. They're saying something about the project and the prototype being theirs. They're calling it the key to galactic dominance. Elena's heart skipped a beat. They know what we have. I think they do, Rhea replied, her eyes wide with disbelief. But how? How could they know about a top-secret project? Elena's mind raced, but before she could respond, the comms were interrupted by a deep, vibrating hum that shook the entire ship. The alien fleet had launched their attack. The first blast hit the Hope's port side with terrifying force. The entire ship shuddered, and Elena was thrown to the ground as the lights flickered and alarms blared. The ship's hull groaned under the pressure, and sparks flew from the damaged control panels. We've lost the shields. Harris yelled from the back of the room. Hull integrity is dropping fast. We won't last long under this barrage. We have to get out of here. Rhea cried. We can't fight them head-on. The Hope is too vulnerable. Elena stood, brushing herself off. Her mind was clear now. There was no time for hesitation. The ship was falling apart. They needed to escape. No, Elena said, her voice quiet but firm. We fight. How? Harris asked, disbelief clear in his voice. We don't have the firepower. We have something they don't, Elena interrupted, her eyes narrowing. We have the prototype. The weapon they want. But we don't even know what it is. Rhea said. We can't use something we don't understand. I don't care, Elena snapped. We can't let them take it. Just as Elena turned to order the crew to prepare the weapon for activation, the entire ship jolted once more. The monitors went blank for a brief moment before flickering back to life, showing a new, horrifying sight. The alien fleet was no longer just attacking. They were boarding. The Hope shuddered again, this time with a deep, ominous groan as the alien fleet's boarding action began. Elena felt the ship tremble beneath her feet, as though the very structure of the vessel was protesting the violent assault. The red emergency lights flashed like beacons in the dark, casting long shadows across the control room as alarms screamed in warning. Boarding pods are breaching our hull on the starboard side, Harris shouted from the engineering station. They're coming in fast. We need to seal off the sections before they get too far inside. Elena's heart raced. The aliens weren't just attacking with energy blasts and weapons, they were preparing to board. It wasn't just the Hope that was under threat now, it was every human life on the ship. The patients, the crew, everyone. They had to act fast, or it would be too late. Lock down the sections. Seal every door. Don't give them access to the medical bays or the cryo chambers, Elena ordered, her voice cold and commanding. Prepare to defend the ship. We can't let them take what they came for. Her mind was spinning. The aliens were after the prototype, the weapon hidden within the Hope, but she still didn't know its exact nature. What was it? What made it so valuable? All she knew was that whatever it was humanity's only shot at survival. And if the aliens took it, it would change everything. Rhea, get to the communications room. Try to send out any message you can. We need backup, Elena continued, urgency in her voice. We can't fight this alone. Rhea nodded and sprinted out of the room, her face set in determination. As Elena turned back to face the command center, her eyes caught sight of the monitors flickering. The enemy was pushing through, their ships breaking into the Hope's outer defenses. The warships that had been guarding them now engaged in a battle of their own. Bright energy bursts lit up the dark expanse of space, but Elena knew that even their advanced warships couldn't hold off the alien invasion forever. Status report. Elena barked. Harris, his hands flying over the console, looked up. Hull integrity is down to 15%, Captain. Shields are almost completely gone. We can't take much more of this. Elena felt a sinking sensation in her chest. They were running out of time. She had to make a choice, fight, or run. The Hope couldn't withstand much more. The aliens would breach the ship, and once that happened, they'd have access to everything. The medical supplies, the cryochambers, and most importantly, the weapon. We can't run, Elena muttered under her breath. We need to find the prototype. Whatever it is, it's the key. Captain, Harris said, his voice tense. I've just detected something. There's a hidden signal. It's faint, but it's coming from a secure location deep in the ship's lower levels. It looks like it's linked to the prototype. A surge of hope washed over Elena. Where is it located? Harris hesitated. I'm not sure. It's in a restricted zone. If we access that area, we'll have to override multiple security protocols. It's heavily guarded. But if we can get to it, we might be able to activate the prototype. Elena's mind raced. The decision was clear, but the danger was undeniable. She didn't have the luxury of time. We have to go. Now. A desperate search. The lower levels of the Hope were eerily quiet. The ship's usual hum had died down, replaced by the sound of distant explosions and the occasional metallic clang of debris falling from the damaged bulkheads. Elena, flanked by Harris and a small team of armed crew members, moved swiftly through the dimly lit corridors, their footsteps muffled against the cool metal floor. They passed empty medical rooms, storage units, and crew quarters, areas that had once been bustling with activity. Now, they were silent, abandoned in the wake of the alien assault. The fear that had once been a whisper now clung to the air, thick and oppressive. Captain, Harris said, his voice low as they rounded a corner. We're getting close. This area isn't marked on the ship's layout. It's off the grid. They didn't want anyone to find it. Elena nodded grimly. Just keep moving. They approached a thick, reinforced door at the end of a narrow corridor. It was sealed shut, with a series of intricate locks and biometric security systems in place. Harris moved forward, his fingers flying over the console as he worked to override the security measures. This is it, he said, sweat beading on his forehead. I can get us through, but it's going to take a minute. Elena didn't have that kind of time. The ship was still under attack, and every second counted. Do it. Harris's fingers paused for just a second. He looked up at Elena, his face a mix of concern and determination. Once we go in, we don't know what's on the other side. The security systems are still active, and there might be automated defenses. We're not turning back, Elena said firmly. We need that weapon. With a final series of keystrokes, Harris activated the override, and the door hissed open. A cold rush of air greeted them as they stepped into the hidden chamber beyond. The room was dark, illuminated only by the pale blue glow of emergency lights. In the center of the room, standing on a raised platform, was a sleek, metallic object. It was large, but compact, and its design was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. It looked like a weapon, but it was so much more than that. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly energy, and strange symbols glowed faintly along its length. Elena's breath caught in her throat. What is it? Harris moved cautiously toward the object, his eyes wide with awe. I don't know. This technology isn't human. It's alien, but somehow adapted for human use. He reached out to touch the surface of the object, and as soon as his fingers made contact, the room's lights flickered, and a low hum reverberated through the air. The power core is activating, Harris said, his voice tense. This is it. This is the weapon they've been after. Elena stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the energy emanating from the prototype, a force unlike anything she'd ever felt before. How does it work? Can we use it? Harris's fingers danced over the surface of the object. It's keyed to a specific DNA sequence. We need someone with the right genetic markers to activate it. Elena's eyes widened. You mean? Before she could finish her sentence, the ship jolted again. The sound of explosions echoed through the hallways. Elena's mind screamed, but she didn't have time for hesitation. There was no turning back now. Activate it, Elena ordered. We need to fight back, now. Harris stepped back, his face pale as he looked at Elena. I don't know if it'll work. But we don't have a choice. He activated a series of buttons on the prototype, and a hum filled the air. Suddenly, the object began to glow brighter, its energy pulsing in rhythm with Elena's heartbeat. The room seemed to come alive, the very walls vibrating with the power of the device. A sharp, piercing sound echoed, and for a brief moment, the entire ship seemed to freeze. Then, the prototype's energy flared, and everything went dark. The power came back on a moment later, but the ship had changed. The entire environment around them felt different. As though the air itself had thickened, charged with an unfamiliar force. And then, the ship's weapon systems came online, faster and more powerful than anything Elena had ever seen. She could feel the energy coursing through the ship, empowering it like a living being. But it wasn't just the ship that had changed. Elena felt it, too. A strange sensation coursed through her, as though something deep within her had been unlocked. It wasn't just the weapon, it was the prototype's energy, coursing through her as well. She could feel the power. The knowledge. And it terrified her. A sudden voice crackled over the comms, breaking the eerie silence. It was Draven. Captain Vale, his voice was urgent, the alien fleet is about to unleash their full force. Get that weapon online. You'll have one shot at this. But Elena had one question in her mind now: how far was she willing to go to use this weapon? The ship hummed with a new, unnerving energy. The lights flickered erratically at first, and then settled into a steady pulse, synchronized with the deep, thrumming hum that vibrated through the walls. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the control panel in front of her. Her mind raced as the prototype's power coursed through the Hope. It was unlike anything she had ever felt. It wasn't just the ship that had changed, it was her, too. The alien technology had unlocked something inside her, a connection to the weapon that made her feel both powerful and terrified. She felt as though her body was filled with raw, unfiltered energy, a force that could either save them or destroy them. Harris was staring at the control panel, his eyes wide with disbelief. It's working, he said quietly. The power's coming online faster than I thought. But I don't know what kind of effect it'll have when we activate it. Elena didn't have time for doubts. She didn't have time to question the unknown. The alien fleet was closing in, and every second counted. They had one shot to turn the tide of this battle. Activate it, Elena said, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling inside her. We don't have a choice. Harris hesitated for just a moment before he slammed his hand down on the activation button. The room around them seemed to breathe, the air thickening with energy. The prototype on the pedestal began to glow brighter, the symbols on its surface pulsing in time with Elena's racing heart. A sudden shockwave tore through the ship, making the floor beneath them shudder. Elena stumbled slightly, but Harris quickly steadied her. What was that? Harris asked, his voice strained. I think we just activated the ship's new weapon systems, Elena said, her voice sharp with realization. We've unlocked something we don't understand. And now we have to use it. She moved quickly toward the command center, urgency in every step. The alien ships were closing in. They weren't just circling the Hope anymore, they were preparing for an all-out assault. Their massive weapons, once dormant, now hummed with deadly intent. The time for waiting was over. We have to fight back now, Elena said. Deploy all systems. We need to disable their ships before they launch another wave of fire. As she took her seat in the command center, she looked up at the flickering monitors. The alien ships were far too close, their weapons already charging. It was only a matter of time before they fired. The ship's shields were barely holding together. They wouldn't survive another hit. "Activate the new weapon systems," Elena commanded, her voice steady. "Full power." The ship's interior shook once more as the weapon systems powered up. Elena could feel the connection to the prototype growing stronger, the energy inside the Hope now flowing like a living force. She wasn't sure what kind of weapon they were about to use, but she knew they had no other choice. "Weapon systems online," Rhea reported from the control panel. "I've locked onto the nearest alien vessel. Captain, we're ready to fire." Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Do it." The Hope's new weapon systems flared to life. A massive energy beam shot out from the front of the ship, cutting through the darkness of space. It collided with the closest alien ship with a force that shook the entire vessel. The alien ship exploded into a fiery mass, its hull disintegrating in an instant. The Hope's weapon systems had torn through the enemy's defenses as though they were paper. "Direct hit," Rhea called out. "We've disabled one of their ships. But there are more coming. We need to do it again." Elena's mind was racing. They had made a major impact, but the alien fleet was massive. One shot wasn't going to be enough. They had to keep up the pressure. "Rhea, target the next ship." "All systems to full power," Elena said, her voice low and determined. "We need to push them back." The ship trembled as the weapon systems powered up again. Elena could feel the prototype's energy surging through her, the power growing with every moment. It was as if the ship was alive, its heartbeat, its soul, intertwined with her own. The second blast hit its mark, taking down another alien ship. But there were too many. More ships were appearing on the sensors, their numbers swelling like a tide that couldn't be stopped. "Captain," Harris's voice crackled through the comms. "We can't keep this up. The Hope systems are already showing signs of strain. If we keep firing at this rate, we'll burn out the core." "We don't have a choice," Elena said, her voice tight with urgency. "We need to fight." "Captain, there's another problem," Rhea interjected. "The aliens are launching a boarding assault. They've breached our lower levels. We're not just fighting them from the outside, we've got them inside the ship too." Elena felt a cold chill crawl up her spine. The aliens were everywhere. They were on the ship. The Hope wasn't just under attack from the outside anymore. The very heart of their vessel was at risk. "Seal off all access points," Elena ordered. "Activate all defensive measures. We can't let them take the ship from the inside." The boarding crisis. Elena moved quickly, her thoughts shifting from the external battle to the internal one. The Hope was still in danger. The alien forces had breached their defenses, and the crew was now facing a two-pronged assault. The ship was being torn apart from within, and they were running out of time. "Rhea," Elena called out. "Do we have any way of containing the boarding party? Can we track where they are?" "I'm working on it," Rhea replied, her fingers flying over her console. "They've disabled most of the security cameras in that section of the ship. But I've found a few stragglers in the lower decks." Elena nodded. "Good. Take a team and intercept them. I'll handle things up here." As Rhea moved off to organize the crew, Elena turned her focus back to the external battle. The Hope's shields were flickering, and the alien ships were regrouping, preparing for another coordinated assault. The alien fleet wasn't just attacking, it was strategizing. They knew the Hope had a weapon, and now they were trying to disable it before it could be used again. "We can't afford to let them get close," Elena muttered to herself. "Captain," Harris called out, his voice strained. "I've got some bad news. The aliens have launched a secondary wave of ships, this time. They're not just attacking. They're carrying something. Something massive. Elena's stomach dropped. What are they carrying? Harris's face paled as the screens flickered. I think it's a warship. But bigger. It's bigger than anything we've seen so far. It's coming straight for us. Elena's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and now the enemy was bringing in a weapon of unimaginable size and power. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a battle for humanity's very future. Rhea, Elena said, her voice steady despite the rising panic, we need to keep the ship intact long enough to disable that warship. All systems to full power. If we can take it down, the rest of the fleet will scatter. We're going to need more power than we've ever used, Harris said, his voice low. We're already pushing the prototype to its limits. If we don't figure out a way to boost the output, we're not going to make it. Elena felt her heart beat faster. The weight of her decision pressed down on her shoulders. They had one shot, one chance to survive this. Just as the massive alien warship loomed closer, a voice suddenly cut through the comms. It was Draven. Captain Vale, he said, his voice urgent, we've just intercepted a transmission. There's a secondary threat, an internal breach from a covert faction within the alien fleet. They're trying to sabotage our defenses from within. You need to act fast. Elena's mind raced as she took in the new information. Not only did she have to fight the alien fleet, but now there was an enemy within their ranks, plotting against them from the inside. How much worse could this get? The hum of the ship had become a deep, painful groan, like a dying creature holding on by a thread. The Hope was a wounded animal, its shields were failing, its systems were overloading, and its very structure was buckling under the weight of battle. Elena stood in the command center, her hand clenched around the arm of her chair as the ship shuddered violently beneath her. The alien warship was drawing closer, its monstrous size dwarfing the Hope. It was only a matter of minutes before it was within range to destroy them. All systems report, now. Elena barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Rhea's voice crackled over the comms. Shields at 35%. Weapons at 60%. We can't keep this up much longer, Captain. The alien warship is nearly in firing range, and we're almost out of time. Elena's heart raced. She could feel the weight of every decision, every command she had issued. Every person on this ship was counting on her. And yet, for the first time since the attack began, she didn't have a clear answer. What could she do against a warship the size of a city? What could they do with a ship that was falling apart under their feet? But there was one thing they still had, the prototype. Activate the prototype. Had issued. Every person on this ship was counting on her. And yet, for the first time since the attack began, she didn't have a clear answer. What could she do against a warship the size? We don't have time for that, Elena replied, her eyes scanning the rapidly approaching warship. We fire everything we've got. If it's not enough, then we make it enough. The betrayal. As the weapons powered up, a strange feeling nagged at the back of Elena's mind. Something wasn't right. There had been strange signals on the comms, irregularities in their communications. It felt like they were being watched, monitored, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the enemy knew too much. And then it hit her. Draven, Elena said sharply, check the internal communication logs. There's something wrong. Someone's been feeding information to the enemy. Draven hesitated, his voice faltering. Captain, I don't. Do it, now. Elena snapped. Before it's too late. A few moments of tense silence followed, and then Draven's voice came through, low and filled with disbelief. I've found it, Draven said, his voice tight with shock. There's a leak. Someone on board has been transmitting data to the aliens. They've known everything, our plans, our weaknesses, even our current location. Elena's blood ran cold. Who? Draven didn't need to say it. The screen flickered as his fingers worked over the keyboard. An image of the crew member's face appeared on the screen. Elena's heart skipped a beat. Thorn, she whispered. Thorn had been one of the Hope's senior officers. He was trusted, respected, a man Elena had relied on throughout the crisis. But there, in the cold light of the screen, the truth was undeniable. Thorn had betrayed them. The prototype's final push. There was no time to process the betrayal. The warship was too close, its weapons primed and ready. Elena's mind raced. She couldn't afford to lose any more time. Rhea, power up the prototype, she commanded. We're giving it everything we've got. Full power, no hesitation. Rhea nodded and began inputting commands into the control panel. The room hummed louder, the air thick with energy as the prototype's power surged through the ship. Elena could feel it, like a pulse deep within her, connected to the ship, connected to something beyond. As the energy built, Elena took a deep breath and stood up, walking over to the control panel. Her hand hovered above the activation button. You ready? She asked, looking at Harris. He met her gaze, his face pale but resolute. We have no choice, he replied. Elena slammed her hand down. The ship erupted in a blinding flash of light as the prototype discharged its full power. A beam of raw energy shot forward, brighter and more powerful than anything the Hope had fired before. It was like the sun itself had been unleashed in the heart of space, a wave of energy that cut through the void, ripping apart the alien warship's shields and hull in a single, devastating blow. But Elena didn't stop. She couldn't stop. They had to finish this. Again, she shouted. Fire again. Another surge of power. The prototype released another wave of energy, even more intense than before. The warship, already on the verge of collapse, was torn apart. Its hull shattered into 1,000 pieces, debris scattering in every direction. But the war wasn't over. Not yet. The alien fleet was still coming. The Hope had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Elena could feel the strain on the ship, the prototype's core pushing beyond its limits. We've done it, Harris said, though his voice was shaky. But it's too much. The core's overheating. The Hope won't last much longer. Elena looked at the monitors. The alien ships had been destroyed, but they had only bought themselves a few moments. The ship was dying, and the crew with it. They needed a solution, and fast. Suddenly, the lights flickered one last time, and the ship trembled violently. A warning flashed on the screen. Self-destruct imminent, the computer voice announced. No! Elena shouted. Deactivate the self-destruct. I can't, Rhea said, her voice almost a whisper. It's beyond my control. The prototype is overriding the systems. The ship is going to go down. Captain, there's nothing we can do. Elena's mind raced. She could feel it, the power of the prototype coursing through her, through the ship. The choice was hers to make. Activate the self-destruct, Elena said, her voice cold, her decision final. Harris's eyes widened. Captain, no. You can't. I can, Elena interrupted, her gaze unwavering. We can't let the aliens take it. If we don't do this, they'll have everything we've learned, everything we've unlocked. This ends now. With a final, defiant look at the crew, Elena activated the self-destruct sequence. And in that final moment, as the countdown began, the Hope's engines flared, and the prototype's power reached its peak. Elena braced herself for the end.